Welcome back. It's crime time here on Closing Arguments. And as you know, this trial all about policing. So we bring in our law enforcement experts to get their perspective and their take on what is happening and being said inside the courtroom. Let's introduce tonight's guest with us, former gang homicide detective Donald Schweitzer. Donald was a police officer for 10 years. He's investigated gang homicides as a detective, served as a member of the SWAT unit, and worked various narcotics assignments. Also with us, Assistant Chief Jailer and former Chief of the Major Crime Section, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III. Adam served as a police officer for 30 years. He oversaw homicide cases, robberies, special victims units, and a gun assault team. He's also the former Assistant Police Academy Director. They've got the credentials, folks. So let's do this first. I want you to listen to the use of force expert here talking about this concept of prone handcuffing. Let's listen to the testimony and then talk about it.
As a police officer, you're trained in prone handcuffing, correct?
Correct.
You're trained in ground defense, correct?
Yes.
And ground defense includes the prone restraint technique, right?
Yes, I mean, there's other terms for it, but yes.
What would you call that? The prone restraint technique?
Well, it depends on in what context you mean.
Right. So the prone control technique, is that a specific term you're familiar with?
Control on a person.
Right. You've heard the phrase control
the handcuffing?
Let's not talk over each other.
Sorry, sir.
For the next question.
Yes, sir.
You've heard the phrase control the head, control the body?
Yes.
That's commonly what police officers are trained, right?
Yes, when it comes to handcuffing, correct.
And in ground defense, right?
Yes.
And in the context of ground defense or in handcuffing or continuing to restrain a police or a suspect, control the head, control the body, right?
Yes, when they are resisting.
And these concepts are widely accepted throughout law enforcement in the United States.
Yes.
And so again, in the training materials you've reviewed, you can see there are photographs, correct?
Correct.
Of officers employing a knee to the head, right?
I didn't see officer employing a knee to the head, no.
Sometimes to the neck.
Near the neck area, correct, yes.
Right. And the specific technique that you're trained is for an officer to put his knee into what would be the trapezius area, in between the shoulder blades at the base of the neck.
Yes,
right?
the base of the neck.
And that is standard protocol, standard police practice, and basically in every single department that you're familiar with.
That I'm familiar with, yes.
All right, let's talk about prone handcuffing. Donald Schweitzer, I see a lot of body cam videos that we show on this program, as a matter of fact, and it seems like it's a very common technique. What are your thoughts?
Vinny, the felony prone position is a term that I was learned to use. That was the term we used to put handcuffs on people. It wasn't to hold people down. It's to be used when there's a very violent situation and you have to get somebody under control, and you could do so within a matter of seconds, really. It inflicts enough pain, you put the handcuffs on, and then you resort to something else. It's never meant to hold somebody down. You know, the defense attorney here was saying that to restrain somebody. No, that's not what it's taught for. It's taught to put somebody in handcuffs. And I think the way that you used that term when you asked that question was actually the way that I would use it.
And in this case, Lieutenant Colonel, I mean, he already had the handcuffs on before he's even put on the ground. So this isn't what we see in our normal body cam videos where a suspect's being apprehended and they're wrestling with him, they get him on the ground, they're trying to get control of the arms. I've seen that dozens and dozens of times. He's already got the handcuffs on.
Yeah, you stole my thunder, Vinny.
Oh, sorry, Lieutenant.
That's exactly what I was about to say. He was already handcuffed. So that defeats the defense's argument right there. The control the head, control the body. Yeah, control the head when the person is not handcuffed. The most dangerous part of a person's body is his hands, not his head. They had control of his hands, so he was no longer a threat at that point. So there was really no need to control his head whatsoever, especially when you had two other officers that were controlling his torso as well as his legs.
All right, our experts are going to stay with us. We've got more Crime Time straight ahead, plus this.
I'm Julia Janae in downtown Minneapolis, where day 8 inside the courtroom of the murder trial of Derek Chauvin centers on questions about use of force.
And tonight's 13th juror question, what do you hear George Floyd saying in the clip played in court today? Is he saying, quote, "I ate too many drugs"? Go to our Facebook pages and tell us what you hear.
Did you then initiate the critical incident protocols for this incident?
I did, yes.
And as part of that, taking photographs of each officer?
Yes, sir.
And were those officers there at City Hall that evening?
Yes, sir.
Pictures were taken of the officers involved in the death of George Floyd, as well as getting some information about how big they are. Welcome back to our Crime Time segment. Still with us, Donald Schweitzer and Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III. Important testimony here, and surprising to a lot of people, myself included, about how small Derek Chauvin actually is. Let's take a listen.
Asked to publish it, Your Honor. And do you recall approximately when this was taken?
Shortly after I arrived at City Hall.
And through subsequent investigation that you've done, did you learn the approximate weight of the defendant around this time period?
Yes, sir.
And what was that weight?
Approximately 140 pounds.
Sorry.
140 pounds.
And as a police officer since, approximately 2007, right?
Yes, sir.
You're familiar with what I call the duty belt, the equipment that he's wearing?
Yes, sir.
Can you just describe for the jurors, in general, what is present on his duty belt?
Initially, firearm, handcuffs, mace. Usually there's a radio holder and a radio associated with that as well, and multiple magazines.
The magazine is what?
A magazine holds the bullets for the firearm.
And any body armor that he is currently wearing?
Yes, it appears as though he has a vest on.
Based on your experience as a peace officer, are you able to estimate the approximate weight of the equipment that the defendant is wearing in this photograph?
Approximately 30 to 40 pounds.
Chauvin only weighs 140 pounds. I had no idea. Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III, the fact that he is so petite, does that change the equation at all in what he is doing in attempting to restrain George Floyd?
Only so slightly. I think it would be more applicable if he was by himself against a man the size of George Floyd. That might be a serious consideration as to the amount of force that was used. But by virtue of the fact he had two other officers with him, and I'm not sure of their sizes, but we have to remember George Floyd's neck only weighs, less than a couple of pounds. So if you have a 140-pound man with equipment on a 2-pound mass of body weight, that's still a lot of pressure.
Donald Schweitzer, what are your thoughts about the fact that Chauvin is just 140 pounds?
Well, I don't want to be flippant, but it's almost as if he has a small man's complex here. He's it's like he's kneeling on a kill or something. A big game. You could see it in his face. You could hear what he said. I get a lot from his body language, and the fact that he's small and skinny like this, just kind of speaks of that. But I agree that, you don't need a lot of pressure to hurt somebody. Small men can put a lot of hurt on people using, techniques like this. So it really doesn't have any relevance in my mind. If anything, it hurts the officer's defense because of how small he is and the way he was talking at the time that he arrested Mr. Floyd.
All right, our final piece of video tonight from the testimony involves the position of Derek Chauvin's knees.
describe to the jury what it is you see here.
Here, I believe the defendant's left knee is on Mr. Floyd's neck and his right knee is on his back area.
Right. If you could use the stylus and place a circle around the left knee of the defendant. And now on the right knee of the defendant. Okay. Now, based on your review, does this show the relative position of the defendant's knees during the entirety of the restraint period?
Yes.
All right, this has become a huge issue in the case brought out by the defense. They're alleging the left knee is more on the shoulder blade, maybe the base of the neck, and not the neck itself. Donald Schweitzer, how important from your perspective in what's taking place here is the placement of the knee? Is it a different maneuver if the knee is on the shoulder blades or the base of the neck versus the neck itself?
Yeah, it could make a difference. I mean, if you're looking at the knee over the carotid artery, that's where you're going to render somebody unconscious. But, Mr. Floyd's face was turned sideways. So there's no doubt that knee was where it would have had to have been to slowly render him unconscious. The fact is that you don't have to be on somebody's neck that long before they go to sleep. I mean, officers are trained how to do that, when not to do that. And certainly in a case like this here, where he's on there for 9 minutes, that's entirely excessive. It doesn't have to be directly above the carotid artery. It could just be near it. This man had pre-existing condition. He might have been under the influence. He was having a hard time breathing. It was just adding to it.
Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee, the defense has had some state witnesses agree that the knee appears to be in the shoulder blades. Is that a different restraint or a different maneuver than putting it directly on the neck? And I don't know where it actually is, but presuming that it's on the shoulder blade versus the neck, is that a different type of restraint or maneuver here?
It is absolutely a different type of restraint, but I think this is the manifestation of smoke and mirrors. This defense attorney is trying to make something ambiguous that really is unambiguous. If you watch the video, he had his knee on his neck, and pure and simple, and it was not on his shoulder blade, it wasn't on his head, it was on his neck.
Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III, Donald Schweitzer, great insight, perspective, appreciate it. Please come back soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Benny.
And when we come back, Julia Janae will join us live from Minneapolis, and we'll bring in our legal think tank.